So you got the Braves and the Rays at the top of the Major League Baseball. The Braves with 147 plus 147 one differential. You got the Rays at plus 149 one differential, and then just go all the way to the bottom. You got the Oakland A's with the minus 236 one differential.
Yikes.
The A's are not the team we're talking about this topic. We're talking about the Braves and Rays, and that guy's thinking, Evan, who is more likely to make the World Series? Because you got the Rays coming in, and they're starting a huge series with the Atlanta Braves tonight, by the way. But you got the Rays coming in, loses a five straight, but they're only 3 games behind the Atlanta Braves, so this is a huge series for the Rays. Evan, how do you see this going, and who do you think is the favorite to make the World Series right now?
Yeah, so first of all, 5 game losing streak in baseball, 162 games doesn't mean a lot. It's going to happen. And right now it is happening for the Rays. They were leading the way for a while. Atlanta won 17 of 18 or something crazy like that. And the Rays lost. They had a 5 game losing streak. It's going to happen, right? How they bounce back is how good teams usually bounce back. Right now they're about 25 over. They would have to lose a lot of ground to get out of this thing, but they're still going strong. But I actually think the Tampa Bay Rays have an easier road to the World Series. Now, if you're asking who's better, that's a different question because you got the Braves. I think the lineup wise, it's by far I wouldn't say by far. If you looked at the stats, OPS, batting average, home runs, all of it. The Braves do very well. You got Matt Olson, who's batting about 250, which is not great, but good. He's got like 78 RBIs, 28, 29 home runs. Then, of course, you got Acuna, who's having the MVP season. He's batting like 334 coming into today. And you got other solid guys like Ozzy Albies, who's just outperforming. Even Eddie Rosario, who's, outperforming what
Orlando
he usually would.
Arcia.
Orlando Arcia, who's outperformed. So everyone in that lineup's contributing, and you can't quite say the same thing about Tampa Bay. You got Randy Arozarena, of course, at the top there. But I think and pitching is about even. Maybe you give a slight advantage to the Rays, or not the Rays, the Braves. The Rays do have McClanahan, who might be the best of them all, but that's debatable. But I do think the Rays have the easier path. Number one, of course, both teams have been there. The Braves won in 2021. The Rays were there in 2020 during the COVID season. Both teams have experience going deep in the playoffs, but I look at the leagues right now, and I look at especially, I think both leagues look pretty weak right now, to be honest. You got some really bad teams that are towards the basement. You got a couple really good teams, and these are the two that really stick out, which is why we're having this topic. But I think when you look at it, the Rays, they face the AL East is going to be their toughest road out, but they've been good against the AL East all year. They've beaten up on the Blue Jays and the Orioles. Anytime Baltimore's faced them, they beat up on them. They've beaten up the Yankees and, of course, the Red Sox too. So the Rays have taken care of their division. What else do you have? You have the AL Central. The Rays will beat anyone in the AL Central. The AL Central is non-existent. And then the AL West, usually Houston would be a problem. We talked about this in the past. Usually Houston's been the problem for the American League last year. Not so far this year. They do not have the pitching. So I think the Rays have, again, is it a guarantee? No, you don't know. So I like their route because of that. The reason why the Braves, well, Evan, you just hyped up the Rays all subject, but the Braves have been killing it. True. I love their lineup. I love their pitching. But the problem is I would watch out for the NL West if I was the Braves, because you got the Dodgers who have struggled. They have struggled, but they could still come around. You got the Giants who were on a hot streak, have now settled, but if they get hot, watch out. And then of course you got the D-backs too. Those pitching staffs can hang with the Braves. I like the Braves lineup. I love the Braves lineup, but pitching wins in the playoffs. And you have Strider, who's been good. He gets the Ks, but let's face it, he blows up sometimes. So the Braves, if they're gonna win it all again, that pitching is gonna have to be strong. And I think there's some NL West competition. So right now, I think a lot of people are gonna think it's the Braves, but I actually think the Tampa Bay Rays have the easier route, and I'm not gonna lose sight of that just because they've lost 5 games. But that's why I gotta say that. Jake, who do you think has the easier route, Tampa Bay or Atlanta?
I'm gonna go the opposite route. Obviously, Randy Rosarena, Wander Franco, all those guys, Harold Ramirez should be for the Tampa Bay Rays. But as you were talking about with the Braves, Matt Olson has had a wonderful year. Ronald Acuna has had an unbelievable MVP season. Orlando Arcia, all those guys. I think that even though the Diamondbacks with Morel Kelly, Zach Gallen, great pitching, Dodgers with, Bobby Miller, Clayton Kershaw, Giants with Alex Cobb, them. I still don't think they can stop that Braves lineup. I don't think the NL West poses as big of as a threat as everybody thinks they do.
I disagree. I disagree just because what we've seen in the playoffs in the past. Yes, they have not been so good recently this year. They're up to this point this year. They have not been good enough. But you have to look at a little bit of context. And that's to say the Braves will put up a fight too. But you look at it, do the NL West teams usually go down, like don't go down swinging? The Giants, the Dodgers, Padres, it doesn't look like they're making it this year, but they made a run the NLCS. I'm just saying history does matter a little bit in this context. And I think they have the pitching. And you look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers have really struggled. But you got Goslin. You've got a bunch of guys over there. Kershaw especially, who's kind of, we talked about him potentially being a Cy Young. You just can't. Pitching is, you got to agree, Jake. Pitching is at least what wins you in playoffs game. Pitching and managing.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what I would say.
pitching wins you championships. Same way as defense wins you championships in football.
Exactly the
But
lineup. So
I gotta bring it. I gotta bring it up. The D-backs, I think, are gonna fall off. I gotta bring it up. Corbin Carroll. Unfortunately, Corbin Carroll got injured last night on a swing, so that's a tough loss for the D-backs.
So let's talk about that. Who do you think is going to be the biggest competition for the Braves then? Because I talked a little bit about the Rays. I didn't really talk. I talked about the NL West. We can't forget about the Marlins. I know the Braves have been the Marlins kind of dad, quote unquote, and they've handled them. But the Marlins are 13 over. They're solid. And then the playoffs, none of that matters. It gets white bread. I mean, the Padres beat the Dodgers last year in the playoffs, and the Dodgers have been. So we can't forget about Miami either. I think there's a few more solid teams this year. Usually it's the opposite way, but this year I think there's a few more solid teams in the National League than the American League this year. But we can't forget about the Marlins too when thinking about Braves competition. But
Yeah, but I honestly think the Dodgers are going to turn on down the stretch. I think the Dodgers will end up being the Braves' biggest competition.